we are promised eternal life. God will raise us up. I know you're watching, darling. Take it easy. I'm doing fine. I'm fine. You're going to take a break. I'm going to finish. And I'm not going to say another word. I'm going to hide in the men's room. So I finished heaven, hell, death, judgment, purgatory. Let's come around to 2 sentences. 2 minutes. If we could understand what God has prepared for us, and that these words, death, judgment, heaven, hell, and purgatory, if you want, are not some crazy ideas that medievals had, but rather something that we can understand in the depths of our own rich human experience now, then we would have more hope. And we will be mindful of death, knowing that if I live for 50 more years or 5 more years, I am already dying to everything in me unworthy of God. I am already, albeit inadequately, growing into eternal life. And as a final thought, I've talked 43 minutes. That's only temporal. These moments we also share in eternity and as eternity. And therefore they are a gift. You give me a gift. I'm trying to do the same to you. I wish you all well, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak to all of you. I thank you for the invitation. And I'm not going to hide the men's room. And I think after a break, you may have some questions. So thanks very much. Reincarnation. Some years ago, I guess 4 or 5, I had a very serious Buddhist student who was from Thailand. He wrote a wonderful paper on the Buddhist concept of reincarnation and the Catholic doctrine of purgatory, because he saw real similarities. And I think there are some similarities. I wouldn't want to push them. But I would say this, in the same way that we have tended to literalize or work out of medieval images of hell as some fiery pit, of purgatory as I was taught by the nuns. They were very sweet, but they didn't know much. That hell was just like purgatory, except hell lasted forever and purgatory didn't. There was nothing in common. One chooses God, the other chooses our self-destruction. And that was in the 50s, where they had very little theological education and no one was asking these questions. So there is a similarity. I think we ought not to take reincarnation in that kind of literal, almost popular sense that we do. That somehow there is some truth to it, in that we are given the amount of time it takes to purify ourselves, to enter into the state of, in a Buddhist sense, desirelessness or nirvana. And one could argue that Christians are given the same amount of time. It may not be the quantified same amount of time, but as much time as it takes. Now, I personally do not believe in reincarnation in some literal sense, but I do believe that there are similarities. I also believe something that has been lost in our own tradition since the Enlightenment in the 18th century, and that is the lines between time and eternity are much more porous than we think. We tend to think of this is our time, eternity is someplace else. No, the lines are much more porous. But I don't think we can literally communicate with the dead, nor they can literally communicate with us. I do think, and I have to remind you, we all know this, that all of Christianity is based upon communication with a human being who has died and who is now alive with God through the Spirit. And so, in many ways, that line between temporality and eternity is porous, and whenever Christians break bread and offer each other the cup of salvation, they are pledging eternal life to one another. reincarnation, though I wanted to share that thought while I had it. Here is one. How do we destroy ourselves in the piggyback analogy? We destroy ourselves. Let me suggest this. One can never see the path of self-destruction in another. One can only fully understand it from the inside out. Years ago, I was talking to a parish priest, and I said, "How are you doing, Joe?" He said, "Well, I'm hearing the little kids' confessions. You know, when we were all carried in, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade." I said, "Isn't it scary to think these little kids, 8, 9, couldn't possibly, quote, go to hell, but you and I could?" And by that, I meant that we could destroy ourselves. And how do we do it? We take the great gift of God to us, ourselves, God's image, and we turn it into the very opposite of God, into the very opposite of love. Not endlessly giving and sharing, as the Trinitarian life is, but endlessly turned in upon oneself. You can never completely destroy yourself until death. But if you have made decisions only for isolation and not communion, if you have been attached to your own self-importance, if you have built up the illusion, the delusion that you are God, we are all, and that person is on the path of self-destruction. The Church has never been able to say anyone is in hell, or that anyone has done that. But I think we can understand it ourselves. The most perfect analogy might be something such as, psychologically, they only have this depression, this thing in common, they're not the same, and that is the state of depression. When you are caught in such darkness, there doesn't seem to be any way out. And Jean-Paul Sartre, of course, is right. Hell, it is other people, because we are so bound up in ourselves and our desire to be everything that we think we ought to be, or our utter disillusionment with the gift that God has given us. So self-destruction is always there as a possibility. One of the things I think is unfortunate, this is a question that brings this to mind, people who were raised Christians and Catholics often were scared to death about hell at an early age. If you don't do this, you'll go to hell. I think that's a little bit lesser now, I hope. But hell is only for adults. Only for those who can eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and eat plenty. And eat well. Remember, the one who is closest to God is the one who is in most danger of destroying himself and rejecting God. And in the great myth, that of course is Lucifer, God's light bearer. Only one close to God can fall from such grace. So the more we know of the goodness of the tree, the greater the danger of self-destruction, of falling into the illusion that we ourselves are God. And that's just what hell is. Living with this illusion that we're God, but knowing that we have destroyed our future, our destiny, our true self, and remaining frozen in that decision. Angry. God is always there forgiving us. I don't know if that answers the question of